Welcome to Sewing Anastasia, and today we are going to take in the seat of some pants that are way too big. George got a pair of awesome plaid vintage pants from the 70s, but they are so big on him. Look at this. And the seat on them is just ginormous. So I'm going to show you today how to take in the waist and the seat of a pair of pants. So follow along and let's fix these pants. So the first thing we need to do is try on these pants with them inside out. So George, take off your pants and let's try them on. Inside out. So when we're pinning the back of the seat, you want to take the fabric and pull it however taut you would like it. Keep in mind, you don't want to pull it so tight that you're seeing horizontal creases in your fabric, but you want it to lay nice and flat across the body. Now I'm going to take both layers here and I'm going to put a pin in and then out, and I'm going to work my way all the way up to the waist and then all the way down to the middle of the crotch here. Okay, you also want to make sure that the pants are sitting on the waist where you want them when you do this. That's going to be really important. So I'm going to make sure these are pulled up where they belong. And then we're also taking these in the waist here. So I'm grabbing this extra chunk of fabric here. Now it's a really thick to pin through sometimes. So you might have to actually just measure this. So I'm going to grab my ruler and measure this chunk right here. So we are going to pull the waist in as much as we want it, as tight as we want it. Now what we're going to do is measure from the body all the way over to the seam over here, and I have about 1 5/8 inches. Now that is going to be our seam allowance for this, 1 5/8 inches. So 1 5/8 inches on this side and 1 5/8 inches on this side of the center back seam. So we know that we're going to have to blend our 1 5/8 inches down to the pins here that I have pinned on the seat of the pants. And you can see here where I have the center back of the pants pinned up in the seat. Now that we have everything nice and pinned up and we know how much to take in the waist, we can take off the pants, put them on our design table, do some chalking and some marking, and start ripping apart that waistband. So let's do it. And be careful not to stab yourself with the pins when you're taking them on and off. Before we start, you have a few tools to grab. You're going to want to grab your 2-inch clear ruler, your French curve, your seam ripper, and some nice bright chalk. So the first thing we want to do is untack the waistband from the pants. So you're going to see some little tack marks here, or depending on your pants, you might actually have an entire seam there holding the waistband down. So go ahead and remove the stitches that you need to, so that way we can release the waistband from the pants. So this waistband has some bar tacks here, so we are also removing these bar tacks. You want to keep in mind how your pants were put together, so that way you can go back and replicate putting them back together after we take them apart. Oh, we got a little quality control sticker in there. How fun is that to see? Okay, so now we've removed the waistband from the pants here. Now you want to grab your chalk and we are going to mark where our pins are. So right where the pin is, I want you to put a nice chalk mark here. And we only need to mark one side of the fabric. So wherever you put a pin, make sure you're chalking. Now once you have your chalk marks where the pins are, you can remove your pins. And it's okay if they look a little wobbly or they don't look even. We're going to use some rulers and even out our chalk marks. What we want to do next though is figure out where our 1 5/8 inches is up here, because that is how much we needed to take in the waistband to blend into the seat. I also just realized there's a belt loop on here, so we want to remove this belt loop next before we move any further. And these are usually attached with bar tacks, so take your time taking off the belt loop and try not to rip any holes in your pants. Belt loop removed. So now you really want to flatten out that back seat seam. It's going to be hard to get it to lay really flat, so you can pin the layers together, you can put a weight on top of it, whatever works for you. So I needed to take in my waist 1 5/8 inches. So my waist seam is here. So I am going to grab my ruler and I'm going to mark over 1 5/8 inches. So I'm going to put a mark right here. and now I know I need to blend into the seat. Now, when I was pinning this, it looks like I have a mark way over here. I'm gonna ignore that with my better judgment because I know I needed to take in the waist 1 5/8 and blend this into the seat towards the center of the seat here. So this here is gonna be a straight line to about the center of the seat, and then it's gonna start curving. So right now, we're gonna be drawing a straight line from 1 5/8 to the middle of my seat where I have the chalk mark. So I have a chalk mark right there. So we are going to, first we're gonna put a weight on it so it doesn't move. Perfect. And now we are gonna draw our line. There we go. So now we can see this yellow chalk line that we have going from the waist down to the center of the seat. And now what we're going to do is reposition our pants. So we are going to keep flattening them out, but now I want to go from the center of the seat here to the crotch. Now what we need to do is start at the center of the seat here, and we need to blend this into the chalk mark that I have down in the crotch. So this is going to be a curved line here. You can always use a French curve. Please use your rulers. Don't be afraid to use your rulers. So we're going to start at the center there and go right into the bottom of the crotch. When you're ending this chalk line that's going into the curve of the crotch here, you have to make sure that it's stopping on the existing seam. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a pucker there. So the chalk line can't stop away from the stitch. It has to stop on that stitch or inside of the seam allowance. Now we're ready to do some sewing. We're gonna start at the top of the waist, 1 5/8 in, and then we're going to go all the way down that chalk line, blending right into that seam at the bottom of the crotch. So let's head over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to be following my chalk line when I sew. I'm actually going to be starting in the crotch because this is the side my chalk line is in. You can start either here or at the waistband. It doesn't really matter. Make sure you're back stitching. Make sure your fabric is nice and flat. When you get up to the waistband here, it's going to be a little tricky, so sew a little, flatten it out, sew a little, flatten it out. Always make sure your needle's in the fabric when you stop to adjust. And put your fingers in there and feel and make sure that the waistband is lined up with the other side of the waistband. Straighten it out. Waistband's always tricky. It's really thick. Back stitch at the top and cut. So now you can see where our original stitching line was and where our new stitching line is, where we followed the chalk line all the way down. So now what we need to do is grab your seam ripper and we are going to open up that original seam. So just start at the top. If you have a chain stitch, you can always release it and then just pull all the way down and it comes undone that fast. It is so nice when that happens. So now we have undone the seam that was originally there. And now what we want to do is iron it open so you can see all that fabric that we've taken in. And before we finish the waist, we want to try it on. So the pants are fitting good, so I'm gonna cut off some of the extra. So I'm going to leave an inch seam allowance here, so that way if I need to let them out in the future, I totally can. And I'm going to do the same thing to both sides of the seam allowance. So after you cut one, you can use the other side as a template to cut the other one. And after you cut those extra pieces off, you should finish your edges. So you could serge them, overcast them, or zigzag. So next we need to put back together the waistband because it's open right here. So these edges here, these 1-inch flaps were turned under, creating a little angle. And then what we're gonna do is sew them to the seam allowance of the pants here. And then we're gonna go back and put in those 2 bar tacks. And then we need to put back on that belt loop at the very center back. Okay, so first we are going to sew this angled piece of the waistband down to that 1-inch piece of seam allowance. So I've already pinned it here so that way you can understand it. So I'm going to pull it out. So that way we're gonna do one side at a time. So we're gonna have the 1-inch of the waistband onto the 1-inch of the seam allowance here, that's plaid or your pant fabric here. And then what we're gonna do is sew just right in the middle. We just wanna keep this together, and we wanna make sure that this piece of the waistband stays on an angle, so that way it's got a nice clean edge at the very bottom here when it flips out. So that way, after we sew it and it flips out, it looks really nice and clean. So we're gonna sew that waistband down to the seam allowance. Make sure you're removing your pins. Make sure you're back stitching the beginning and the end here, and cut. And it should look something like that. And now we're gonna do the exact same thing to the other side. And cut. Now on the inside, it's nice and finished, and you can't see any stitching on the outside. So that is what it should look like. And then if we lift it up, we can kind of see we've got those little angles right here of the folded in fabric, and it's attached to the seam allowance here. So next, I'm going to be putting back the bar tacks. You could skip this step. The bar tacks aren't necessary. Now I have 1 bar tack done, and we're going to do the next one. So my sewing machine has a bar tack built into it, but a bar tack is essentially just a really tight zigzag stitch that's narrow, which you could just use your zigzag stitch and make the stitch length super small and make the width of the zigzag stitch really small. So I had 1 more bar tack on here right below that green piece of piping. So I'm gonna add 1 more. There we go. Now we have both of our bar tacks finished. Now I'm gonna sew back on that center back belt loop just the way it came off. So first I'm gonna do a little straight stitch across the bottom here. Now I'm gonna take the belt loop and fold it back, and I'm gonna give it a little mini bar tack. And cut. There we go. That's sewed on real nice. And now we're gonna do the top. So make sure you just fold under that edge, and then make sure you're putting your bar tack, your zigzag stitch, real close to the top of the belt loop. And cut, and we're finished. We did it. We took in the pants. We took in so much fabric. We literally took in inches off of the waist and the center back seam. So you can see that they fit much nicer now. These are a high-waisted wool pair of vintage 70s pants. So they have a little bit of a different look to them than a modern pair of pants, but they fit much better now. So we'll turn around and take a look at the fit. So they are fitting so much nicer in the side. We don't have all that extra fabric up in the front. And then in the back, they're much smoother across the bottom as well. We don't have that saggy diaper look in the back anymore. So overall, I would say these pants are looking so much better. And all we had to do was take in the waist and the seat just a little bit, or a lot of it. So hopefully next time you need to take in a pair of pants, you can watch this video and follow it step by step and save your pants and make them fit you better. Thanks so much for watching Sew Anastasia today. I hope you enjoyed taking in the waist and the seat of a pair of pants. Learning how to tailor is an awesome skill to have. If you have any questions or comments about tailoring up these pants, leave it down below and I will get back with you as soon as I can. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and leave that comment down below. What kind of videos would you like to see this year? I would love to know and create them for you so that way sewing can be that much easier. If you're not already a subscriber to Sew Anastasia, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for watching today. And don't forget, I also have Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and all those other social media websites. So make sure you follow Sew Anastasia so that way we can stay connected and creative together. And don't forget, I now teach sewing classes in my design studio. So you can take classes in person or virtually. You can take them from anywhere in the world. So cool, right? So check those out at sewanastasia.com. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.